You've probably played Among Us hundreds of times, but I guarantee you've missed some of its biggest secrets. From hidden vent connections and secret map areas to rare game mechanics and surprising role interactions, these 12 secrets will completely change the way you play. Let's get started. Secret vents and hidden vent connections. Most players know that vents are used for fast movement, but many players never learn how the vent networks actually connect. A vent is not just a random escape hole. Each vent belongs to a specific network, and understanding that network can completely change how you read a game. If a player is seen in one area and appears somewhere else only a few seconds later, the first question should not always be, did they vent? The better question is, could they have reached that location through the vent network? This can be especially important during meetings. A player may claim they were nowhere near a body, but if the locations are connected by vents, their story becomes much less convincing. On the other hand, a player may appear suspicious simply because they moved quickly, even though the map gives them a perfectly normal route. Knowing the connections helps you separate what is impossible from what is actually possible. Vents can also create unusual situations when special roles are involved. Depending on the role and game settings, different players may interact with vents in different ways. This means that seeing someone near a vent is not always enough information to know what happened. The important detail is understanding what the role is capable of doing and whether the vent network actually connects the locations involved. The best players do not just memorize where the vents are, they memorize where each vent can lead. That knowledge can help them escape, investigate, or catch someone in a lie. A vent can be a hiding place, a shortcut, a trap, or a piece of evidence. And sometimes the most important thing about a vent is not where it is, but where it connects. Hidden map areas and secret locations Among Us maps are designed to be explored, but most players only pay attention to the areas that matter immediately. They run toward a task, follow another player, search for a body, or rush to repair a sabotage. Because of this, many locations are passed by without being properly noticed. A small corner of a map can be important because it is isolated. A room can become dangerous because it has only one entrance. Another location may be easy to reach but difficult to escape from. These details can completely change what happens during a round. When a body is discovered, the location itself is often treated as simple information, but the location can tell you much more. How many entrances does it have? How long would it take to reach it from nearby rooms? Are there vents close to it? Could a player have escaped before anyone arrived? Could someone have entered from another direction? This is why hidden map areas matter. Location that seems unimportant during normal gameplay can suddenly become the most important place in the entire round. A player may use an isolated area to avoid being seen. An imposter may use a hidden route to escape. A special role may have an advantage in a location where other players cannot easily watch them. The maps are full of places that players recognize visually, but do not truly understand strategically. Once you start examining the map instead of simply running through it, you begin to notice how many different possibilities exist in every area. Secret interactions between roles. The addition of special roles changed Among Us completely. Originally, players mostly had to understand two possibilities, crewmate or imposter. Now different roles can change movement, information, protection, investigation, disguises, and the way players win. But the most interesting part is not always what one role can do alone. The real chaos begins when different roles interact. One role may give information about another player. A second role may be able to hide or change that information. Another role may protect someone from danger. An imposter role may create a situation that makes an innocent player look guilty. This means that the same event can have multiple explanations. A player suddenly disappears. Did they use a special ability? Or did they enter a vent? Someone survives an event that should have eliminated them. Were they protected? Or did another ability change what happened? A player appears to be in one location, but another player claims they saw them somewhere else. Could a role explain the difference? These interactions create some of the most confusing moments in Among Us because players often assume that the simplest explanation must be correct. But when special roles are active, the obvious explanation may be completely wrong. The key is to know which roles are in the game. Without that information, you may be trying to solve a mystery while ignoring half of the possible answers. A strange event may not be a glitch, it may not be a lie. It may simply be the result of two different abilities interacting at the perfect moment. Hidden abilities that players often miss. Some role abilities are impossible to miss. They create a large visual effect or immediately change what is happening on screen. But other abilities are much more subtle, and these are often the abilities that players use incorrectly. An ability may seem weak because it does not create an obvious advantage. But the real power of an ability often depends on timing. Using it in the wrong place can reveal your plan. Using it at the right moment can completely change the game. Before using an ability, experienced players think about several questions. Who can see me? Where are the other players? What information will this create? What will people think happened afterward? That last question is especially important because Among Us is not only about what actually happens, it is also about what everyone believes happened. An ability does not always need to help you directly. Sometimes it only needs to create confusion. If an action can be explained in 3 different ways, the meeting becomes much harder to solve. This is why players often miss the most powerful use of an ability. They think about what the ability does, but not about when to use it. A role may have a powerful ability, but using it immediately may be a mistake. Waiting a few seconds can create a much better opportunity. Sometimes the best use of an ability is not the most dramatic one. It is the one that leaves everyone else wondering what they just saw. Secret visual task details. Tasks are one of the most familiar parts of Among Us, but many players do not pay attention to the details of what actually happens during them. Some tasks include visual actions or effects that can provide information to other players. When a player performs a task, the animation and result can sometimes help confirm whether their story makes sense. But the important part is knowing what the task should actually look like. A player may say they completed a task, but did the correct animation happen? Did the task finish properly? Could another player see the visual result? Was the player even standing in the correct location? These small details can become powerful evidence during a meeting. However, visual information depends on the game settings. Not every lobby uses the same settings, so players should always understand the rules of the match before treating a visual task as absolute proof. Still, task animations can reveal much more than many players realize. The game may be showing you information while you are focused on something else. The next time you see someone completing a task, do not only look at the progress bar, watch the action itself. Pay attention to what changes on screen. Sometimes, the smallest visual detail can tell you whether a player is telling the truth. Hidden differences between Among Us maps. The maps in Among Us are not just different backgrounds. Each map changes how players move, how quickly they can reach different areas, and how much information they can gather about each other. The Skeld, Polis, Airship, and Fungal all create completely different situations, even when the same roles are being used. The Skeld is compact and familiar. Because many rooms are close together, players can often encounter each other quickly. This can make alibis easier to check, but it can also create confusion when several players are moving through the same area. Polis creates a different type of game. Its larger spaces and outdoor areas can separate players much more easily. Someone can be far away from the main group, and it can be harder to know who was nearby when something happened. The Airship changes the experience again. Its size and layout create more complicated movement. Players may start in different places, and there are multiple routes through the map. This means that simply knowing where someone was at the beginning of a round may not tell you where they could be later. The Fungal also has its own unique environment and layout. Its unusual design makes the map feel different from the classic locations, and players have to adjust their movement and awareness. The important secret is that the same strategy does not work on every map. Learning Among Us is not only about learning the roles, it is also about learning the map you are currently playing. Hidden details in the Skeld, Polis, Airship, and Fungal. The Skeld is probably the most familiar map in Among Us, and that is exactly why many of its details are easy to ignore. Players move through the same rooms so often that they stop looking at the environment. But the rooms contain machines, screens, pipes, objects, and other details that help create the feeling of a real spaceship. Some of these objects are connected to tasks. Others are simply part of the environment. But they still help explain what kind of place each room is supposed to be. Polis feels completely different. Instead of moving through one connected spaceship, players move between buildings and outdoor areas. The snowy environment creates large open spaces, and this changes how players track movement. The airship is much larger and more complicated. Its many rooms and different routes can make it difficult to know exactly how a player moved from one place to another. A player may take a route that another player never considered. The Fungal has perhaps one of the most unusual environments in the game. Its natural surroundings and strange locations make it look completely different from the classic maps. Players may focus on tasks and other players so much that they never stop to examine the environment around them. But hidden details do not always mean a secret room or a secret button. Sometimes the important detail is simply a route, a location, an object, or a small feature that changes how you understand the map. The more you explore the maps, the more you realize that they are not just places where the game happens. The map itself is part of the gameplay. Secret ways to use doors and sabotages. Most players think of sabotage in a simple way. Something breaks, and the crewmates have to fix it. But sabotage is much more than that. Sabotage controls movement. If players are spread across the map, a sabotage can force them to move toward one location. Players who were separated can suddenly be pushed into the same area. A player who is safely alone may suddenly have to run toward danger. This is why timing is so important. Doors can be just as important. A closed door may only delay a player for a short time, but a few seconds can make a huge difference. A door can separate players, delay someone reaching a body, prevent a player from following another person, or give someone enough time to escape. Secret game mechanics Among Us contains many mechanics that players learn through experience rather than through a complete explanation. Vision is one of the most important. Two players can be standing close to each other, but still have completely different information. One player may see someone move, while another player may not see the same thing at all. This means that when a player says, "I saw them," you should also think about how much they could actually see. Cooldowns are another important mechanic. Many abilities cannot be used repeatedly. After using an ability, the player must wait before using it again. That creates a decision. Do you use the ability immediately, or do you save it for a better moment? Using an ability too early may waste the opportunity. Waiting too long may mean the opportunity disappears. Meetings also change the game in ways players sometimes forget. A meeting can interrupt movement, stop a plan, change the locations of players, and create new information. A player may be preparing to do something, but then a meeting begins. When the meeting ends, the situation may be completely different. This is why Among Us is not only about what happened, it is also about when it happened. Timing can change the meaning of an action. A player entering a room at one moment may look innocent. Entering the same room several seconds later may look extremely suspicious. The more you understand the game's mechanics, the easier it becomes to notice when something does not make sense. Rare events and unusual interactions. Most Among Us games follow a familiar pattern, but sometimes something happens that players almost never see. Two abilities may be used at nearly the same time. A role may interact with another role in an unexpected way. A player may move or survive in a way that seems impossible at first. These moments are interesting because players may not immediately understand what happened. Someone disappears, and the first thought is that they vented, but perhaps a special ability was used. Someone survives an event that should normally have ended differently. Perhaps another role affected the situation. It is simply a combination of features that most players never see together. And that is what makes Among Us so unpredictable. The same map, the same roles, and the same rules can still create a completely different situation when the timing changes. Hidden details in Among Us animations. Most players focus on tasks, movement, and finding the imposter, so they often ignore the small animations happening around them. But these animations can reveal important information. A special role may create a unique visual effect, a task may have a specific animation, or a player may move in a way that reveals what ability they used. Sometimes the animation can even contradict a player's story. If someone says they completed a task, did the correct animation actually happen? If someone claims they never used an ability, did you notice a visual effect? These small details are easy to miss, but experienced players pay attention to them. In Among Us, the game can sometimes reveal the truth before the players do. Secrets added in updates. Among Us has changed dramatically through updates. New maps, roles, abilities, settings, and mechanics have added completely new ways to play. A player who returns after a long break may know the classic game perfectly, but still be surprised by features they have never seen before. Some updates change strategies, while others add small features that many players barely notice. A new role can change an entire meeting. A new map can change movement, and a new mechanic can make an old strategy useless. This is why updates are important secrets in Among Us. The game players remember from years ago may be very different from the game they are playing today.